Next question is, what's the ruling on one who willfully enlists in a kafir military hostile to Muslims like the US military? The answer to that is بشر المنافقين بأن لهم عذابا أليما الذين يتخذون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين. Give the hypocrites the tiding of a painful torment that's awaiting them. Who are they? They're the ones who take the disbelievers as protectors, friends, and helpers over awliya, over the believers, and against the believers. Willfully volunteering to join militaries like the UK or the US is clear ridda. Ridda means it's kufr, means apostasy. It's volunteering to enlist in a military that's a kafir military. And that's all that needs to be said. I don't really need to say a word beyond that. A kafir military hostile to Muslims. Take a recent example. The women we spoke about in prisons and in camps, living with no rights, under torturous conditions. Who's really behind it? Who actually caused it? A military that's starting wars with Muslims every other day. Not just Muslims. But who wants the blood of someone he has no right to kill when he meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if he's not Muslim? Their wars are not our wars. They massacred their brothers in faith. In the past and the present, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, 250,000 massacred in days with the consent of the UK. That's on their brothers in faith, so imagine what they do to the Muslims. Those who are emotional to the Palestinian cause and don't take that matter or this matter from an aqidah perspective. They take it from an emotional perspective. Whose continued, ongoing, non-stop support is the backbone of the Zionist occupiers in Palestine who are killing your brothers and sisters and children. It would be quite embarrassing if I had to detail the crimes of their military on the innocent Muslims globally. It would be an endless series. Their militaries are the most powerful, colonizing, conceited, arrogant, defiant terrorist organizations on the face of the earth today and possibly of all times. Their wrath is focused on Islam and Muslims, and it knows no bounds. If any Muslim merely thinks or considers enlisting, if that thought comes to their mind, to enlist in their ranks, they need to detoxify their beliefs and their hearts and minds with tawheed. Let me repeat it clearly for generations to come, inshallah. Those who willfully volunteer and enlist in such organizations fall into ridda. They're murtaddeen, meaning they're apostates. Apostates means they exited the folds of Islam. If you see them in their propaganda pictures performing salah in rows, or in videos calling adhan, or with the Quran in their hands, or hanging on the door of the Kaaba, they're murtaddeen. They're murtaddeen even while they're circumambulating the Kaaba and while kissing the black stone. Murtaddeen even while their women show off in scarves. Murtaddeen means apostates. And that entails their spouses must do fasakh from them. Otherwise they'll be with them in haram. Their Muslim relatives can inherit from them. And they can't inherit from their Muslim relatives. If they sacrifice, you can't eat from their sacrifice. If a Jew or Christian properly sacrifices, you can eat from theirs, but you can't eat from their sacrifices. You can marry a Jew or Christian, but you can't marry from them. If they die, their carcasses shouldn't be washed or shrouded by Muslims. Their carcasses shouldn't defile a pure masjid. Janazah on them is not permissible. Burying them among the Muslims is not permissible. Dua for them after they die is not permissible. Dua for them while they're alive is only to guide them or destroy them. Keep in mind the terms of the question. Willfully. The question is willfully volunteering to enlist. That's essential when coming to a hukm on this matter. If one is forced into the military, we would touch on this topic from a different angle. The ulama of earlier centuries spoke on the ruling if kuffar force Muslims to join the military or to harm Muslims. And I briefly touched upon that in the Tawheed classes. We know the reality. The US is not drafting Muslims into their military, at least not yet. The basis of kufr in this matter is not from one angle. It's not one foundation. It's multiple bases. This matter is not intertwined in kufr, it's entangled in kufr. And I'm not even going to get into the haram issues. This issue is a prime example of mudaharatul mushrikeen, of tawalli. Mudaharatul mushrikeen is backing, supporting, aiding, helping the kuffar against or over the Muslims. The young brother who asked this question, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him and bless him and his family. I'm confident by the will of Allah that he will do a superb job in answering this. I'm confident. Why? Inshallah. Because he was raised on my Tawheed classes. As young as he was raised on my Tawheed classes. May Allah grant him and his family barakah and steadfastness on Tawheed. I emphasized wala and bara in the Tawheed classes many times, and before that and after that, because falling in a nullifier of this nature is a repercussion of not knowing an essential concept of la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, which is referred to as wala and bara. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُم مِّنكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Ibn Hazm rahimahullah ta'ala said this verse is as apparent as it indicates. Meaning, one who gives wala to the kuffar is a kafir. He said no two Muslims can dispute this. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا بِطَانَةً مِّن دُونِكُمْ لَا يَأْلُونَكُمْ خَبَالًا وَدُّوا مَا عَنِتُّمْ قَدْ بَدَتِ الْبَغْضَاءُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ وما تخفي صدورهم أكبر قد بينا لكم الآيات إن كنتم تعقلون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم أولياء تلقون إليهم بالمودة لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كانوا آباءهم أو أبناءهم أو إخوانهم أو عشيرتهم أولئك كتب في قلوبهم الإيمان وأيدهم بروح منه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ترى كثيرا منهم يتولون الذين كفروا لبئس ما قدمت لهم أنفسهم أن سخط الله عليهم وفي العذاب هم خالدون. In another verse, ولو كانوا يؤمنون بالله والنبي وما أنزل إليه ما اتخذوهم أولياء وَلَكِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. Had they believed in Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what was revealed to him, they would not take the disbelievers as awliya, as protectors, as allies, as helpers, aiding them over the Muslim. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, this verse means you'll not find a single heart that has iman and taken the kufr as awliya in it. It's got to be one or the other. Either iman in the heart or taking the kuffar as awliya in it. And we can mention tens upon tens, if not hundreds of proof on this matter. I mean, willfully volunteering and joining the military of the US and the UK. If that's not among the peak of mudahara of the mushrikeen, then what is? That's absolutely all that needs to be said about this matter. We should stop right here, and that's it. Let me take it a little bit further. The mudahara of the kuffar in this matter entails many other issues in reality. It's not only participating in an organization that harms Islam and massacres Muslims. As mighty as that is, there's other mighty matters intertwined with it. Killing the youngest of our infants, or the worst sinning Muslim, is mightier than destroying the Kaaba? An infant or the worst Muslim who falls under the term Islam? Imagine the reaction of Muslims if the US or the UK military was to mobilize in order to destroy the Kaaba. They've done what's worse than that thousands upon thousands of times. And what I'm getting at is the massacres, as mighty as they are, they're only a stepping stone to other mighty matters attached to them, like colonizing, stabilizing kufr in our countries, invading and influencing the rules and laws that people go by. It's colonizing, it's protecting, it's upholding, it's defending, stabilizing, spreading man-made kufr constitutions. Participating with them is participating in making kufr supreme, like ruling by democracy or handing the lands over to Rafida to rule by shirk and destroy the Muslims. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. And fight until there's no fitna. Fitna is shirk. Until there's no shirk. وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. It means fight until the religion is for Allah alone, completely, totally, fully to Allah. What's the ruling on one who fights to establish the exact opposite of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered? Allah said to fight until there's no fitna, and this person contributes to the massacres of the Muslims to establish fitna and kufr on this earth. Someone who does that, does he truly love and have wala to Allah and His Messenger and the believers? Does he have wala to them? Has he established wala to Allah and Islam? In Sahih Muslim, وَمَنْ قَاتَلَ تَحْتَ رَايَةٍ عُمِّيَّةٍ or عِمِّيَّةٍ, عُمِّيَّة or عِمِّيَّة is both linguistically proper. يَغْضَبُ لِعَصَبَةٍ. يَغْضَبُ لعصبة أو يدعو إلى عصبة أو ينصر عصبة فقتل فقتلة جاهلية. فقتل فقتلة جاهلية. راية عمية. Raya means a banner, whoever fights under a banner. عمية comes from blindness. Whoever fights for a blind banner. Ammiya here means dalala. Whoever fights under an uncertain banner. Everything one fights for that is dalala is included in that term. A cause that's not clear. An unjust cause. One who fights for tribalism is included in that. If he's killed, what did the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He died a death of jahiliyyah. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Imagine people participating and enlisting in massacring Muslims to establish kufr on the earth. You see how deranged the thinking has become? A Muslim only gives his life to raise the word of Allah supreme. That's when the life becomes cheap. To honor the deen of Allah and to protect what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered that it be protected. Willful, volunteering, and joining such military is kufr, even if they claim to love Islam. Even though those who enlist, they enlist in believing and in loving the cause, the military and the cause. But let's say, for example, they say we're doing it for dunya purposes. We're doing it for the GI Bill, for the college tuition, to get in shape, for medical care, to travel around the world, for the salary. This person's still a murtad. Imam Abdul Latif ibn Abdul Rahman al-Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala said, someone may hate shirk and love tawheed Listen to this. He may hate shirk and love tawheed. But the defect will come to him how? In not having bara'ah, disavowing the people of shirk. And in not having wala to the people of tawheed. With that, he follows his desires and enters into shirk, destroying his deen. And with that, he leaves the layers of tawheed. Why? He said, because he has no wala and bara. And he said that's taken from the word of the shahada. As I've always said, the biggest proof on wala and bara is the shahada one takes. Abdul Latif ibn Abdul Rahman al-Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala also summarized a fatwa of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala on this matter. He said, because the fatwa on this are many. He said, Abdul Latif ibn Abdul Rahman al-Shaykh mentioned that Ibn Taymiyyah said, من جمز إلى معسكر التتار ولحق بهم ارتد من جمز إلى معسكر التتار ولحق بهم ارتد وحل دمه وماله. من جمز is a term means to go to flee to side with. It's mentioned in the hadith of Ma'iz radiallahu anhu, who confessed zina to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered that he be stoned. In Sahih Muslim, فَلَمَّا أَذْلَقَتْهُ الْحِجَارَةُ هَرَبَ. In Sahih Bukhari, فَلَمَّا أَذْلَقَتْهُ الْحِجَارَةُ جَمَزَ. The term in Muslim, Sahih Muslim says, Ma'iz fled. Jamaza was used in the narration of Bukhari. So that means, Jamaza means fled. Linguistically, that's what it means. Fled or goes to. So he's saying, whoever flees and goes to the Tatar and joins their military is a murtad and apostate. The wording of Imam Abdul Latif, rahimahullah ta'ala, quoting Ibn Taymiyyah, I was never able to find that in the original works of Ibn Taymiyyah. And I believe what he was trying to do was to summarize, correctly summarizing the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah overall on this matter. He has his own fatwa as well. Imam Abdul Latif ibn Abdul Rahman al-Shaykh, he's the grandson of Imam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. He was born actually around 200 to 220 years ago. He said, Abdul Latif al-Shaykh said, if one willingly, by choice, goes to fight with the kuffar against the Muslims and aids them with himself or his wealth, then there's no doubt that he's a kafir. Ibn Baz in his fatwa said, the Muslim scholars have an ijma', consensus. They agree. Whosoever aids and supports the kuffar against the Muslims and helps them in any way, he's a kafir. Just as they are kuffar. Al-Azhar, when it wasn't as bad as it is today, in 1947, when the Sheikh of the Azhar was Abdul Majid Salim, he said, one who aids the enemies of Islam is not among the people of Iman. And he's left his religion with that. And he said that Muslims are free from such people. Imam Ahmad was asked about a woman during the time of Babak al-Khurrami. Babak al-Khurrami was a man who fought the Abbasi Khilafah. In al-Jami' لعلوم الإمام أحمد and al-Furu' and al-Sunnah lil-Khallal, they said Imam Ahmad was asked about the woman kidnapped by this individual. Babak al-Khurrami, he was a Majusi. He fought the Abbasi Khilafah for nearly 20 years and he gained massive amounts of followers. And he killed and enslaved a lot of Muslims until he was finally defeated and killed by Al-Mu'tasim. He enslaved Muslim women during his time. The question to Imam Ahmad was about the children of the women who were raped and taken by him. What's the ruling about the children? He said they follow their mother. The children follow their mother. They're Muslim like their mother. Because Al-Khurrami's attacks on the Abbasi Khilafah lasted nearly 20 years, those children grew up among his people and probably grew up to fight the Muslims. You know that from the question, because Imam Ahmad was asked a follow-up question. He said, what if that son joins the military of Al-Khurrami and fights us and fights the Muslims? Imam Ahmad said, he's a murtad, he's an apostate, he's an infidel. Ibn Hazm in Al-Muhalla was talking about the categories of people who live among the kuffar and the rulings pertaining to each of them. And he even mentioned the story of Zuhri. Zuhri vowed and planned during the time of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik that he will leave to the land of the Romans, because the successor of Hisham, who was Al-Walid ibn Yazid, he had vowed if he gains power and he's able to, he's going to kill Az-Zuhri. Az-Zuhri said, I'm going to go to the lands of the Romans. Ibn Hazm said, when he was talking about the categories of those who live among the kuffar, he said, something like that would be excused. That applies to some, not many, who live in the lands of the kuffar today. And the reason I mentioned that is to show the context the ulama were speaking in. They were speaking on the ruling pertaining to those who live in the lands of the kuffar. What am I trying to get at? That's a response to those who do qiyas. Qiyas of the mas'ala, of the issue of enlisting in the military on the mas'ala of living among the kuffar. That's quite a deceptive qiyas, not just an invalid one. Ibn Hazm, the same one who excused people like Az-Zuhri, said about the military, فَإِنْ كَانَ هُنَاكَ مُحَارِبًا لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ مُعِينًا لِلْكُفَّارِ بِخِدْمَةٍ أَوْ كِتَابَةٍ فَهُوَ كَافِرٌ. Whoever lives among the kuffar and fights the Muslims and aids them in any service, even if it's merely writing for them, which is to support them against the Muslim, then he's a kafir. He also said, whoever lives among the kuffar and by choice fights the Muslims, he is a full and complete murtad with the complete full rules of a murtad applicable to him. من لحق بدار الكفر والحرب مختارا محاربا لمن يليه من المسلمين فهو بهذا الفعل مرتد له أحكام المرتد كلها. مظاهرة and what it entails is just one of the bases of their ridda. Take another ground for their ridda. Every person who joins the military must swear in by repeating the military oath of enlistment. They solemnly swear and affirm to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all its enemies. Against all its enemies. To join the military, you have to solemnly swear and affirm that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States against all its enemies. Bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. Bear true faith and allegiance against all the enemies of the United States. You can go ask the children of Afghanistan and Syria and in Yemen, who are the enemies of the United States, and Palestine as well. And elsewhere. They have to solemnly swear to abide by the orders of the President of the United States. And the orders of the officers over them, and according to the rules and regulations of the uniform code of the military justice. The UK and other nations have similar oaths. Now give me a complete, full sentence in that oath that's not kufr. And if you don't think it's kufr, you better spring to the Tawheed classes. I will fully admit a person who gave that oath has fulfilled the concept of wala and bara fully and completely. Wala and bara to the United States. Wala and bara to its constitution, to its leaders, to their military superiors, to their codes, not to Allah and His Messenger and the believers. Whoever willingly gave that oath has entered the gates of kufr and ridda. Muslims affirm to support the Quran and Sunnah against its enemies. They bear true faith and allegiance to La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, to the Quran, to the Sunnah, and to the teachings of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to be loyal to Allah and to the Messenger and to the believers. The person enlisting goes willingly, full choice of his, to give an oath in statements of kufr. They give their allegiance of kufr to accept and abide and agree to man-made laws. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ. No duress, no torture, no force. They're not even pressured into this oath. Freely, willingly, walking into the gates of kufr to utter kufr. What Islam is left for one willingly, freely volunteers to accept tahakum to the kuffar, tawaghit, rules and regulations, whether it's the uniform code of the military justice or the constitution, or to abide by what the president says and to give allegiance to them. That takes me to another issue. The murtaddin who join these institutions join it because they love it. You don't willingly volunteer and offer and risk your life to something you don't love. There's no military that can function without its soldiers giving them their full love and wala. Rules are not based on a few exceptions. They proudly display their love and wala decades after leaving it, on their license plates, on their stickers, on their cars, on their flags, on their houses. The parades celebrating their service. They're bolstering and bragging about it. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-mar'u yuhsharu ma'a man ahab." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Uhshuru alladhina zalamu wa azwajahum." On the judgment day, people will be in groups, assembled together. Assemble those who did wrong with their companions. Umar radiallahu anh said, the people of riba will be together. Yawm al-Qiyamah. The people of zina will be together. The people of alcohol will be assembled together. Following in that pattern, those given allegiance and willfully volunteering to such institutions that are hostile to Islam and Muslims, knowing what it entails, they will be assembled together with their companions. Who would want to be assembled with mass murderers who fight Islam and Muslim? There's plenty of jobs elsewhere in the West. A trash collector, a garbage man, a trash collector, or a gas jockey is by far a more noble job than a 7-star general in such militaries. A coal miner, a bathroom attendant, preserving his tawheed is more of a noble job than a major general in that institution. They join the military because they love it. They love their fellow Kafir soldiers who are fighting Muslims. They risk their lives for it. They love the man-made constitution they're fighting for. And they love to live under its darkness and under the darkness of democracy. So they're willing to put their lives at stake for it and to protect it. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. In another narration, anta ma'a man ahbabt. A man is with whom he loves. Or you'll be with whom you love. I have a student who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided. Alhamdulillah. He told me once, they instill so much love for those institutions when you're in them. He said, I'll give you one example. He said, when we finished basic training, they played the official song. He was in the Navy, so I think it was The Anchors Away, as he said, if I'm not mistaken. He said, we used to fall down to our knees in tears due to the enormous love and dedication and loyalty that was instilled in us. He said, even years and years after that, I would cry in love for that military unit when I would hear that song. I read a murtad online responding to Trump's statements about Muslims in the West. He said, it doesn't really matter what faith you are. We're all Marines first. Words of clear kufr. We say Tawheed is first. They say Marines are first. هل يستويان مثلا أفلا تذكرون? Any military of any country cannot exist without the soldiers giving them the summit peak of their wala. Without that, one would not be willing to give his life for them. When I graduated from high school here, I immediately went to Medina to study. Some of the Rafida classmates with me joined the military. A year and a half after that, the first Gulf War broke out. Years after that, I ran into one of my junior high and high school classmates, and he told me he was in the Air Force. I said, were you deployed to Al Jazeera where the planes took off to kill Muslims? And he said, yeah, he did. I said, how did you have the heart to actually drop bombs like that? We walk around ant colonies in our yards to avoid stepping on ants, and you drop bombs on innocent children and Muslims who say La ilaha illallah. They had brainwashed him beyond what one can imagine. By Allah, he said, I actually enjoyed and loved it. The other issues, I mentioned Ibn Hazm's statement in his ruling, in his fatwa on joining the military. I mentioned the context of the statement. He mentioned the ruling on joining the military of the kuffar while talking about the ruling of those living among the kuffar. And likewise, when Imam Ahmad was asked about women forcibly taken by the kuffar who were raped, he said, the child follows the mother in her Islam. He's Muslim like the mother. He said, but if that child grows up and joins the military, he's a kafir. I reiterate the context they were mentioned in to highlight a point. Some take the ruling, as I said, of a mas'ala and apply it to another mas'ala, do an invalid qiyas or deceptive qiyas. Some do qiyas of joining the military on the issue of living among the kuffar. And there's other things they do qiyas on. Issue in fatwas is not a fruit cocktail or mixing salad. Issue in fatwas is not reclining back with ignorance speaking about matters like this. Randomly choosing any mas'ala that has a hukum and then comparing another to it without any scholarly explanation for the first or the latter. You're living among the kuffar, so, joining them is very similar. Or other matters. Living among the kuffar has its rules, regulations, and conditions. Ibn Hazm, as I said, mentioned it. Al-Mughni, Ibn Qudama mentioned it in Al-Mughni. Al-Qurtubi talked about it. Al-Alusi, Ibn Kathir. It's been spoken about. And there's verses and ahadith on it. I've spoken about it many times. It has its conditions and rulings. Other matters, one is forced to do while he's under duress, has its own rulings. And they have their limitations and conditions. This matter itself, if one word was different in this mas'ala, the entire answer would be touched upon from a different angle, as I stated. You don't even do qiyas or use your intellect to compare one drafted with one volunteering, let alone the issue of living among the kuffar. Doing qiyas of willfully joining the military based on the mas'ala of living in the lands of the kuffar is an ideal example of qiyas ma'al fariq, invalid qiyas, but in this matter it's actually deceptive qiyas. In fact, it's the qiyas of the shaitan. The first one to do invalid qiyas in opposition to the direct orders of Allah was the shaitan. And his destiny because of that was فَاهْبِطْ مِنْهَا فَمَا يَكُونُ لَكَ أَن تَتَكَبَّرَ فِيهَا أَأَسْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا. Shall I prostrate to someone you created from clay? His qiyas was, I'm from fire, he's from clay, so that makes me better than Adam and I don't have to make sujood. أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. He exempted himself from the broad order to prostrate by qiyas. False qiyas and intellect and emotion that oppose the clear orders is a recipe for the disaster of one's deen. Ibn Sirin said the sun and moon were not even worshipped except by the usage of qiyas. Ibn Abbas said Iblis should have accepted the orders of Allah instead of doing his own qiyas. He disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and did qiyas, and he became a disbeliever due to that wrongful qiyas. And he said, who does invalid qiyas is an associate of Iblis, Al-Hasan, Ibn Sirin, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Abd al-Barr, Al-Sha'bi, Masruq, and others warned of wrongful qiyas. The rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are clear. And once there's orders from Allah, from the Quran and Sunnah on a matter, we don't care about your intellect or the qiyas that you bring. There's combat positions and non-combatant positions. Not everyone is pulling the trigger. Not everyone is in a plane dropping bombs on the heads of the Muslims. They have other jobs. They have criminal investigators. They have divers. They need technicians. They need engineers. They have therapists. They have intelligence people. They have computer programmers. It's not permissible to join even in those positions under the umbrella of a kafir military hostile to Muslims. All those positions are in direct support of an institution hostile and at war with Islam and Muslims. And before they got into that position, they entered the gates of Ridda with their oath. The soldier can't pull the trigger nor drop a missile without the direct support of those other positions, those other so-called non-combatant positions. You know how many non-combatant positions are needed to send off a drone to kill the children of Yemen? With technology and the way the wars are run today, some of those non-combatant positions are more essential, more harmful than the triggerman. The military doesn't create positions for fun and leisure or because they have a big budget to donate salaries. فإن كان محاربا للمسلمين معينا للكفار بخدمة أو كتابة فهو كافر. Ibn Hazm's fatwa. Even if he merely writes for them in support of what they do against the Muslim, then he's a kafir. أو كتابة, just a mere writer for them. or writing for them. Ibn Taymiyyah said, if one sharpens the pencil or washes the clothes of an oppressor, he's among those who aid the oppressor. In Idah Turuq al-Istiqamah, which is a book written by the same author that wrote the fiqh book that we've been learning from, he mentioned, or he narrated, that a man asked Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said to Imam Ahmed, am I considered among those who aid the oppressors? Imam Ahmed said, what's your position? He said, khayyatuhum, I'm a tailor for them. He said, you're not assisting the oppressor. You're the oppressor. You're the direct oppressor. You're the oppressor himself. Other ulama mentioned the same identical question, the same answer, but attributed the story to Sufyan al-Thawri or Ibn al-Mubarak. Being a tailor, sewing and stitching their clothes is a direct oppressor, direct participant. They said the level under that who aids them is the level under that. Who is he? The one who sells them the strings and the needles. In Sayd al-Khatir, that's written by Ibn al-Jawzi, when Imam Ahmad was in prison, he mentioned that when Imam Ahmad was in prison, a guard asked him, am I among those who aid and assist oppressors? He doesn't make decisions. He opens the gates and he closes them. He cleans the prison. He brings the food for the inmates. Imam Ahmad said, no, you're not among those who aid the oppressors. You're directly involved. You're the oppressor. He said, Imam Ahmad said, whoever aids you, then he is among those who assists and aids the oppressors. Al-Asbahani mentioned that and he said, Imam Ahmad said to the guard, the ones who aid and assist the oppressors is the one, he's the guard. He said, the one who cuts your hair and washes your clothes and cooks your meal and buys and trades and deals with you. You are a direct oppressor. The jobs in the military are direct participants. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Fir'aun, they're like the jobs that the military of Fir'aun took on. He said about the military of Fir'aun, إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا كَانُوا خَاطِئِينَ. Fir'aun, there was the Fir'aun of the old times, and there's the Fir'auns of today. If the Fir'auns of today didn't explicitly say what the Fir'aun of the past said, مَا أُرِيكُمْ إِلَّا مَا أَرَى, or أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, their actions and missiles and drones spoke it. Fir'aun of the past was the Fir'aun of Egypt. The Fir'auns of today are global Fir'auns. For Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, elsewhere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not exempt the soldiers of Fir'aun. They're direct participants. إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا كَانُوا خَاطِئِينَ. Fir'aun, Haman, the leaders. وَجُنُودَهُمَا, and their troops, their hosts, they're all wrongdoers and sinners. Put them in the same hukum. وَاسْتَكْبَرَ هُوَ وَجُنُودُهُ. Fir'aun became arrogant, alone, by himself, and his troops, they were arrogant, without a right. وَنُرِيَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا مِنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَحْذَرُونَ. Again, Fir'aun and Haman, the leaders. That's all? The leaders alone? وَجُنُود, the direct participants, the troops. If it wasn't for Fir'aun's military, what could Fir'aun have done? Tyrants and tawagheet and those kuffar who are hostile against Muslims, they couldn't do nothing without their troops. So someone will say, it's the leaders doing it, but it's not the troops. We feel bad for them. وحاق بآل فرعون سوء العذاب النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم تقوم الساعة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. Evil torment will encompass آل فرعون. آل فرعون. آل usually means the family of. Al Hassan is the family of Hassan. His name is Al Hassan. It's the family of Al Hassan, of Hassan. This is not the family of Fir'aun. Al here is referring to his troops and followers, because his wife was the woman I just mentioned recently in the talk about the sisters in prison, the believer, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to follow her example. There's a few other points that I wanted to clarify, but they're more geared towards talabat al-ilm. We can mention them elsewhere in detail. I think we'll stop here because of the time.